All right, we're now in one of our engine houses. This is building 5. We've got two large hit miss engines in here, and this Ryder Ericsson hot air engine. Um, Hot air engine is an external combustion engine similar to a steam engine in that the combustion process takes place outside the cylinder. Uh, Hot air engines are so-called Stirling engines, and they were invented by Robert Stirling, who was a Scottish minister in the 19th century. And the reason for developing engines like this is that early steam engines were quite dangerous. There were many boiler explosions that would injure people and destroy property. So people were trying to find some kind of engine that would not be as dangerous, and they came up with this idea. Now, most hot air engines, or all hot air engines, have two pistons. Many of them have two cylinders, and the early ones did. Ryder's or Ericsson's contribution was to combine both the displacement piston and the power piston in a single cylinder, which is right here. This is a very large Ryder Ericsson. It's got a 10-inch piston cylinder. You'll common or frequently see either 6 or 8-inch ones, but it's somewhat rare to see a 10-inch engine of one of this size. Ericsson himself was a Swedish-born engineer who came to the United States. He's probably best known for the design and construction of the USS Monitor, the Union ironclad during the Civil War. Some of the things that were particularly interesting about that design is he invented the rotating gun turret, which continues until this day. He also developed the first propeller system for naval vessels, so steam-powered naval vessels, so that they weren't paddle wheel steamers. So although this engine, or these Stirling engines, date back to the 19th century, Stirling engines are still very popular today, and they've sort of come back into their own. Almost every satellite that's in Earth orbit today and on spacecraft have Stirling engines on them, because if you remember from your basic chemical thermodynamics course, if you take an engine like this and run it backwards, that is, instead of putting heat in and getting motion out, you rotate it and run it in the opposite direction, it works as a cooling system. So, as I say, they come back into their own. They're even used in this particular engine was used for only one purpose, and that's to drive this little water pump over here. Now, because they were safe and very reliable, you could put this in your basement, or this model, for example, might go into a larger building in a rural community. You build a fire down in the firebox. The thing would run all day. It would pump water up into your attic, where it could be heated, for example, so you could have running hot water. In terms of its capability to do mechanical work, it's only about 1 horsepower. So more or less all of this is the equivalent of that small John Deere gasoline engine we saw before. But once again, they're very reliable and very safe. So now we're going to go take a look at some larger hot air engines. This is our Olds hit-miss engine. It was developed or built by the Olds Motor Company, and the Olds Motor Company was started by Ranson Olds. You've probably heard of Olds more specifically, or he's better known for his work in developing the assembly line process for automobile development, and also for the Oldsmobile automobile. Turns out Ranson was the second son of an Ohio blacksmith, and the father believed that the older son was the one who would be the successful one. So Ranson had us leave home and started the company, and one of their first products was this hit-miss engine, and it's for farm use. You can see it's on a trailer. You hitch your horses up here. The farmer sets up in the seat over there. You haul this thing out into the field. It has a clutch and a belt drive here that you can put a belt on and connect that to some piece of farm machinery. Maybe it would be hooked up to something like Hildreth, the power axe, or to a combine or something of that nature. Now, these engines, this is a single cylinder engine. It's very difficult to know either on this one or many of the other ones what the exact horsepower is. But this has like a 5-inch cylinder and an 8-inch bore, so you probably get somewhere between 3 and 5 horsepower out of it. However, as you can see from this good-sized flywheels, you get a lot of torque, so they're very good at driving machinery. The ignition system on this is, if you remember from the little John Deere engine on the ice cream machine, I said it had a magneto with a hot coil. This actually has something called a buzz box, which is this gizmo. You get a buzz box that would connect up to, you hook that up to a battery and connect that to your spark plug. Most of us, when we think of buzz boxes, think of Henry Ford and the Model T, which used buzz boxes. Actually, buzz boxes date back to technology developed in the early 18th century, and Carl Benz on the first automobile, well before the Model T, was using a buzz box and a spark plug. Now, what this machine did, besides driving farm equipment, you come to the back end of it, you could also run a pulley to this wheel, which would turn a large saw blade that's over on the other side. You see there's like that two foot diameter saw blade. You had a table here, you could put your wood on here, cut your sawwood, firewood, or whatever. The cooling system, this is a water tank. The water circulates just by convection. You oil the system by putting an oiler. You have an oiler here. Now, on modern gasoline engines, particularly modern automobile engines, we have fuel injection. Remember back to the Buick, I said it had two carburetors to inject the gasoline into the cylinder. We think of fuel injection as being a modern invention. It isn't. These engines, built in the late 19th century, early 20th century, had fuel injection, direct fuel injection. There's a fuel pump down here. Fuel would get injected directly into the cylinder. They're 4-cycle engines, so every compression cycle the engine would fire. The problem is, in those days, they didn't have any electronics to govern the injection or to govern the ignition, and so gasoline was being continuously injected into the cylinder for every cycle, but the engine wouldn't fire. It would only fire, there's a governor over on this side, and it would fire based on the number of RPMs the engine was running at. And that's why they're called hit and miss engines, because when you watch the video, there's that characteristic pop, and then it goes chugga, 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 and then it goes pop, and so on and so forth. And that's why they're called hit and miss engines. Now, for some reason I don't understand, I'm not from New England, but New Englanders tend to call these one-lung engines. And if anybody can explain that to me, I'd greatly appreciate it. Now, just beyond that is another hit-miss engine. This one was built by International Harvester. It's much bigger. I believe it has like an 8-inch bore and a 20-inch cylinder. A little more comfortable seat for the farmer to sit on when he hitched it up to his horses. Instead of having the tank and water, tank and pipe, it actually has a radiator here. Water cascades down this for cooling. There's a water pump back at the other end. Similar, there's a clutch on the other side, similar to the clutch on the Olds engine. And what else? It probably gets somewhere around 8 horsepower. It's also fired using a buzz box and a spark plug. So very similar engines, just a little bigger, but same kind of operation. All right, thank you.